Alright, hello guys, welcome back to YouTube, and today we will be talking about USD JPY on the 5-minute time frame. Now, this is one of my favorite pairs. As you can see, it has pretty consistent results. And yeah, we're just going to go through my back tests over the year of 2025. So hopefully I can teach you guys some stuff about trading and you can just have a look. Let's get into it. So I think the first potential trade we had was on the 2nd of January. This trade here, the entry was given at just after New York market open, and as you can see, the entry is just massive. That's a huge candle, and for me, I just didn't really like the setup as well. We had this huge candle here, and I just don't rate that, especially with this liquidity. Just not a fan, so I ended up skipping it. It did win, but we win some, we lose some. That's the game of trading. This setup here, totally invalid. Doesn't have the same structure that I like seeing. As many of you guys know, with liquidity, supply and demand, we always look for, if I can find it, a structure like this, creating liquidity. Now, is that structure here? Absolutely not, because there is no liquidity formed, so we would skip that trade. Now, here we go where it gets interesting. So, it's a bit chaotic right now, but first of all, I think we had two losses in this situation. The first one was a sell here. We had the supply zone right here. We had liquidity formed, which is quite nice. Very nice structure. I would take this any day in the markets. Came back to the zone a bit slowly, which is a bit of a con, but entry was given at around 350. In this backtesting, I did end up trading past my normal hours of 3, so you could technically say this was invalid, but I was just doing it to check if it was valid trading longer. It turned out it wasn't. It did actually decrease the win rate, but I'm going to show you the trades anyway, so you get a good idea. So this one here was a loss, and that's fine, it was unfortunate. Then as you can see, I took another trade here, which was also a loss. Although I can't lie, that is a pretty poor setup, and I don't think I would take that in live markets, because as you can see, we have liquidity here, but there isn't a breaker structure really except from there. So for that one, we live and we learn, and that kind of trade, I'm not really sure I was that confident about. But yeah, we start off with 2 losses, which obviously isn't the best, but it's fine. You saw the end result, so we know it's going to be a good back test. Now, here we go. Here's the first win. Here we go. We have liquidity here, formed by the wick, and the breaker structure formed by the wick. Now, this is quite an interesting situation where intuition comes into play. And for me, most of the time, I wouldn't really be entering when it's just wicks forming the breaker structure. But because it returned so nicely back to the zone and we got such a nice entry, I decided to enter. The good thing about this trade is that you don't even have to aim for the highs to get a good RR. We got what, a 1 to 2.5 here, and we literally aim for the middle. We got a small price movement, which is very nice. If you have a big entry, that means you have to have a really big price movement to fulfill the RR. So there's a higher chance of winning if your entry is smaller. So this one here, we made back the first 2 trades plus 0.5%, which is very nice. As you can see, we do have bullish market structure. This high beat here. Now this high did not beat this high, but it's a situation when the wick was higher and price closed higher. So I was like, alright, my intuition tells me this could be a good trade, and it was. Nothing going on here, invalidations. Now here we go. I really like this trade. I love this trade. We have really nice liquidity here. We have a break structure which is clean, and we also break this low to the left, which obviously means that we have 3 good confluences. I'm of course going to enter, and we did. Oh yeah, another confluence as well is reacting off a supply zone, which is very nice. So I decided to enter, aim for 1 to 3. Stop loss hit within, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 candles, which is very nice. And yeah, that was a valid trade. I think it did end up reacting off this demand and it went up, but we obviously aimed for our stop loss to be higher than that, so that wouldn't be an issue. And yeah, that's another win. So I think we're up to 3.5 RR% right now, which is very nice. This setup, unfortunately, I think is invalid because it was too early in the morning, which is a shame. Well, it's not a shame because it would have lost if I entered, but that's 7:45. My trading starts at 8 o'clock, so anything earlier, I'm like, no. Too much experience of market open, London market open, just ruining my trades. This trade here, price close inside the zone, so invalid for me. Now here's the setup we have. Price did react off this large supply here, but it was a large supply, so they kind of are a bit less powerful as such. Now, as you can see, we have a demand here, we have liquidity, and the high breaks the previous high. So for me, this is a valid trade to enter. Unfortunately, it did lose. Now you can see that there is price reacting off a supply zone in the middle, but often we have found out it doesn't actually really matter. Same if it like is on the same height as the previous high. It doesn't actually really matter on the 5 minute. So for this one, I did end up taking, aiming for 1 to 2 point, well, should be 1 to 2. unfortunately it lost. This trade here, invalid, would have been a very nice setup, but unfortunately it just didn't tap. This trade here, invalid. I'm not ever going to take a trade like that. It just looks like a V. The hardest thing about trading is that poor trades often win. Trades that don't fit your strategy often win, which is very hard on your psychology, especially when you are starting out as a trader. But this trade I just wouldn't take because there is no liquidity and no real breaker structure. So I would just avoid that. Did end up winning a lot, but it is what it is. That's the game of trading. Alright, now we have another setup here. Again, really nice. I really like this. We have good bearish price action, a lower high and lower low. This low here of the setup beats a low to the left, which is obviously very nice. And this demand zone here is just disrespected. So we are very, very bearish in my opinion right now. And yeah, we get the setup. We get liquidity here. We do get a breaker structure, but the setup is nice enough for me to take. And the entry is very clean. So what do I aim for? A 1 to 3 again. And we hit full TP, which is very nice. In this situation, if I aim higher, I probably would have lost the setup, but I don't really know. I think I'm getting quite good now with kind of catching those setups before it retraces. And yeah, as you can see, it does, I believe, enter another supply zone. I did not actually take this trade, but if you did, you would have been able to make a very, very nice profit. Oh yeah, I didn't take it. You would have actually lost, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the reason I didn't take it is because the price action isn't that good. We have liquidity at the top here, but we just have a higher high and higher low coming back to the zone. It's just not very clean, and I like taking kind of more A to A plus trades. This up here, I believe, is invalid because it was at 920. Whenever you backtest, make sure you're doing it in time with your time frame, because if you're taking trades at 2 a.m. and you're in the London session, you're just bullshitting yourself, really. Setup here is absolutely awful. If you take that, swear down. Like, the liquidity just does not break the previous high. Not a good trade. And also, what the fuck is that? It's a weird candle. Again, here, just non-entry provided. I believe that did tap, but for me, this is not enough liquidity. I just don't like the setup. And yeah, I skipped that one. And it gets very nice when you skip a trade and it loses. It's probably one of the better feelings in trading. Not really sure where this supply came from. But yeah, this was me just drawing out a fair value gap to see how it would work. Didn't do shit, didn't do anything. Right, now this trade, very nice. Aim for what, a 1 to 2. I aim for 1 to 2 kind of minimum, definitely on the 5 minute. And this trade was a big stop loss. See, that is where I entered 1 to 2. I would not go higher because when the stop loss is big, it just means that price has to move further and further for you to reach a smaller RR, which just isn't like optimal. So I decided to go for 1 to 2. And look at this. This is the most goated trade I've taken. Look at that. That is insane. I just tapped it and then price went down. Call it luck. You can call it skill. But yeah, I did end up winning that trade. And that was a very nice feeling indeed. Yeah, with this trade again, we have really strong liquidity, breaker structure, double breaker structure. And although we are coming down from a downtrend, this is a good enough setup for me to take. Now, here we have a supply, demand, supply. It's a 5 minute, we can do that. We have the supply zone here. Very clean liquidity, very clean breaker structure. I believe it doesn't reach past these lows, but as I said, it doesn't actually really matter on the 5 minute. It just adds a bit of a confluence. And we get that really nice entry. The best entries are when it just enters on the bearish candle, so you don't get a wick. Entered there, aim for 1 to 3, as well I usually do. And it ended up winning like before, and then it retraced, which is very nice, a very nice feeling indeed. What time was this trade? 4:45. So again, this is outside the time frame, but we will filter that at the end to have a look at our results between the hours of 8 and 3. So that there is another winning trade. Now this setup here, I would have taken it if the entry was good, because there is very nice liquidity, and you can see a breaker structure on well multiple. But what the hell is that candle? Hell nah. 130? Hell nah. Actually, I'm lying. I didn't end up taking this, but you could have absolutely taken this on the flip. A flip entry is basically on the half an hour or hour candles. You can take it as soon as price crosses the close of the other candle. As you can see here, you would have entered down there, and oh my gosh, you really got a nice trade. You could have 1 to 10 at the highs if you really wanted, but I don't think you would have done that. Now, this obviously is technically a valid trade, and I probably would have taken that in live markets, not only for 1 to 10, but still. However, I didn't take it in the backtest, so we're just going to have to ignore it for now. Right, very nice trade here, except it's not nice because I got stopped out, which is very annoying. I kind of forgot. So this trade here, we have liquidity here and here. We have 2 levels of liquidity. And we also have a fake out zone. This is when there is a normal supply and demand zone within our setup. You can see here, here's the supply zone. It fakes out the traders. All these traders are going to get in on this rejection here, which means the liquidity builds up even more between the setup, increasing the confluence of it winning. Now we also have a very clean breaker structure, which I like, and a nice quick return to zone. So what is the problem here? We get the lovely entry, but we get wicked out, which is it's the most irritating thing about trading. I say I have a good psychology, yeah, but this thing is just kind of annoying. It happens a lot, especially on the 5 minute. It's just nothing you can do about it, because this did end up hitting our full TP. That is just an unfortunate trade, but it happens. This trade here, yeah, I didn't take, so it's invalid. This trade here also gave you an entry, but it's just invalid. The liquidity did not break the previous high, which just means it's a bad setup in my opinion. This trade, however, is valid now, and I did take it. For some reason, my stop losses are like really bugging. I'm not really sure why. The replay has bugged it out. For this one, I would have probably aimed for 1 to 2 because of the big entry. You can see we have a huge candle, and what time was that? 9:35. So it isn't news, but sorry, it is a market open, but still. This had very nice liquidity. We had 2 levels of liquidity here, and although you could technically say it was swept, I don't really view it as that. I just view it as there's still liquidity under here. And we have a very clean breaker structure, which is very nice. Unfortunately, this did go in the direction for a bit, but then ended up dumping on us here. And you could argue that was a news, but I would have expected to take this trade. We had enough time. So yeah, this is an unfortunate loss, and I lost it around here. So that's another loss to the book, unfortunately. Now this is this weird price action. I just remember like looking at it, I was just, what the hell's going on there? Same here, it's really odd. It's just like straight lines going up diagonally. Alright, here's another setup here. This just isn't quality enough for me, and I didn't end up taking it. 9:35, which is a valid time frame, but we are bearish. This is, as I said, these setups is not enough liquidity for me, and I just didn't really like it. I just felt that it wasn't a very good setup in my opinion, and it ended up losing, which is so good. It's like the best feeling when you skip a setup and then it loses. It's amazing. 1 to 2. Oh, well, I didn't end up taking it. The reason I didn't end up taking it, I remember now, is because price did not close below this here. If it's like, it's just intuition, I guess, as well. I just skipped this trade because price did not close below this wick here, which is one of the main things I look for. Unless it's a small setup trade, I really like looking for the breaker structure and the liquidity low to break fully and close fully beyond this low here. I think that is one of my main rules, to be honest. Again, the problem with the strategy is that it's so intuition based. You just can't like create a set rulebook, because intuition will always play a role in this strategy unless you're taking every single setup, which is valid. That is true. This trade I just didn't end up taking, and you could have potentially got profits if you had a 1 to 2 tight stop loss, but for me I just didn't take it, and it did retrace up here before carrying back down in the original direction. That's a good thing about trading with trend. Although in the 5 minute, you know, it's a bit more give and take, trading with trend will always be your friend, because well, that's a bit zesty, but because that's just where price wants to go in the long run, so it just adds confidence to your trades. Now this here is valid, but I didn't take it because, as I said, price did not close below this low here. If this liquidity was formed and then this price came down to here and then came back to the zone, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'll take that. Unfortunately, it just wasn't valid. This setup here, I believe price, yes, price didn't tap the zone. So this one is fair enough. I didn't take it, but yeah. Now moving on, this setup here is just, I'm not a fan. I'll tell you why. Because liquidity did not beat this high. This is not valid for me. This is not a valid trade. It doesn't look nice. I go for more A+ cleaner setups than that. I just didn't really like it at all. And that is why I skipped it. And guess what? It lost. It's the best feeling, skipping trades and them losing, because you know you're kind of getting the hang of the intuition. What is going on with these stop losses? It's ridiculous. Right, this one here, I exited down here, so I must have aimed for something. 1 to 3, it must have been a 1 to 3. Right, now this setup here is nice. Now the overall structure is alright, because we have obviously very clean liquidity and the break structure. The only con you would say is this consolidation around this area. But the key thing is we have this area of fake out. This here is another supply and demand zone, which forms another setup in the setup. So you get hundreds, maybe thousands of traders entering here, which just creates more liquidity. And that is why this setup won. This setup, obviously liquidity, break structure, overall a nice setup, and I entered and I got a 1 to 3, just aiming at this low here. When I aim for lows, I tend to kind of not aim for the wick. I kind of aim for the price close, as I think that's a bit more reliable. And it kind of does work out for me in the long run. Now, here's another setup using pretty similar price action. However, no, I did not get stopped out here because that is 1 pip away. So I entered here and went down for, I believe, another 1 to 3. Yes, I would have entered there, but it's 2.8, may as well go 1 to 3. So yes, this was another 1 to 3. This I was very confident on because we just reacted off a previous supply. I had another supply, very nice reaction here. And very nice clean liquidity. Nice breaker structure, 2 breaks of structure. Breaks are low. Very bearish, and it's a nice bearish structure. It's not quick movement. It's nice lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. And honestly, I would enter that any day. And I did, and I got a 1 to 3. So that's 2 back-to-back wins, which is very nice. That's 6% like that within... Is that the same day? Yeah, same day, Thursday. Very nice. Here's another setup. As you can see, the price thingy is what is going on here. And this one is very nice. I really like this setup. It's very clean. I think I must have aimed for 1 to 2 here, yeah, because I'm actually not sure. But yeah, I aimed for 1 to 2 because I would have targeted obviously there, but it's a 1 to 1.5. That's not enough, so I just go minimum 1 to 2. And that's a very nice setup. You can see strong liquidity, breaker structure, clean downward movement back to the zone, and a very nice entry. As you can see, the entry is only this bullish candle. We don't get another bearish wick in. So entered on the close, as we do, get a nice 1 to 2 like that. You can see the structure going up towards it. Very nice bullish price action. We have a higher high here, breaks this high. To the left, higher lows, just goes up. And I thought this would be a nice area to buy from. And it was. This trade would be valid, of course. I like this setup. We have very clean liquidity here because of this gap and a nice breaker structure. We are reacting off a supply, but the key thing is it's outside our time frame. Stick to your time frames. This was at 7:15 in the morning. No, if you're trading then, take it. But I'm not trading at 7:15 in the morning, so I'm not taking that. However, I am taking this setup right here, which occurred at 12:25. Now this setup again, this is bugging. It doesn't matter. Aim for 1 to 3, I believe. Again, I don't really tend to go higher than a 1 to 3 because I don't know, that's what I'm comfortable with. The win rate as it is decent. But that's something we can look at back tests. We can go back over all these trades and see what would happen if we extended our TP or even doubled it. I think they're very, very useful information. Now this setup here, although I don't really count it, we do have some liquidity at the bottom, but the main liquidity area is this area here, which is fine. That's totally within distance for me visually. And the break structure is just super clean. Super clean. Double breaker structure. Breaking this high to the left. Breaking this side to the left here. Very nice setup, and I would enter that any day, especially with that kind of entry. Those entries when it's just one candle in the zone, bullish close, enter there and get a nice 1 to 3 RR. And he said this was goated. You know why? Because I did the same thing. I got TP and then price reversed. And this is why I enter not at the wick. Because if you enter the wick, that's a stretch of the price. Price solidly closed here, didn't close here. So that's why I always, unless it's an interesting situation, aim for the price close, not the wick. And you can see it does work. And also, I definitely messed up. This is meant to be over here. See, this is actually, I think, a 1 to 4. 1 to 4.5, yeah. Very nice trade, very clean trade. I really like USD JPY. It's one of my favorite pairs, 100%. 5 minute is just so clean, and price actions are very nice, not too volatile, unlike Euro USD, which is absolutely crazy. Now, what is this? This looks interesting. I don't know why I marked that out because I'm not taking it, but yeah, no setups over here. Oh, this is a shame. As you can see, just didn't tap, and that would have been an absolutely crazy trade. Unfortunately, that was late as well. It was 8:50, so it's irrelevant. We don't look at that. Do not look at trades past your time frame, because it will just mess up your back tests. This setup here, I actually just didn't take it for some reason. It's because I was kind of skeptical, I think, of this candle here. It looked a bit too big for me, but I didn't end up taking it, but I think it did win anyway. Yeah, it did end up winning. Anyway, that's a shame. I didn't take that. Is that valid? Technically, yes, it is valid because it's got liquidity there, and a breaking structure. I just didn't take it. In my intuition, I just thought it wasn't a valid trade, and I guess it was, but it is what it is. You do end up missing a lot of trades. Well, you don't end up missing a lot. You do end up missing some trades whilst you're trading. It's just the game. You do miss them, but it is what it is. Now, this up here, I did enter, as I thought was definitely valid. What I've kind of figured out is when the structure is bigger, I tend to decrease the RR a little bit because the reaction often is a bit less big. But here we had two setups. We had the first one here, which had very nice liquidity over here, and a very clean breaker structure, which is obviously what we love seeing. A breaker structure there. And unfortunately, just didn't win. It wanted to go to the zone above. Now, this is an issue when you're trading. You often have multiple zones. Like in this situation, don't know why it's great, but you have 3 zones here. And when you're in the live markets, you're often with the decision, should I wait? Should I wait for an entry? Should I not enter? And honestly, in my opinion, if you get a setup, just enter, because you'll just end up missing more and more trades than you win. Like for this instance, we failed this trade, but we ended up entering on the next setup, which was very valid. We have even stronger liquidity, much higher breaker structure, very bearish, and this ended up winning and providing us making that trade back plus 2%. Could I have aimed for higher RR? Yes. When you get a small entry like this, a small stop loss, it's definitely possible to increase your RR. In this case, could have got a 1 to 5, but yeah, 1 to 3 is what I aim for in this situation, which is fine. It won, and that is very nice. This setup here is valid. I would have taken this in live markets because this low beats all these lows, liquidity, breaker structure, all the things we look for in a trade. Except, again, it's at 7:10. So I found a lot of these trades happening at 7 AM in the morning. They do tend to lose in 2025. This setup here, I didn't enter because I actually just... did it tap? That's the question. Did it tap? It didn't tap. I was skeptical because I saw these 2 wicks and I was like, nah, it went there twice. Liquidity's taken out twice. And I just thought it wasn't a very good trade. I think I forward tested this one, to be honest, because also it's a large structure trade. These large structure trades do often have mixed results. Some people like them, some people don't. So often I just forward test them to have a look. This case, this one did end up losing. But I would say that's more because of this liquidity just being absolutely destroyed with these 2 candles here. It's just not very valid, I guess. It is unfortunate, but I didn't take it, which is fine. Again, the more trades you lose... Okay. Now, here is another beautiful setup. This is amazing. Oh my god, I'm literally such a goat. This... you can say what you want. You can look at it. You think, blah, blah, blah. This is such a goated trade. 1 to 2.5 because it's a bigger structure. Aim for a bit of a lower RR. Super nice liquidity. Breaker structure, breaker structure, breaker structure. Look at the high. Now, the only thing I was a bit skeptical about was this big wick, which happened around near market open, but it's fine. It is what it is. And I took it. And oh my gosh, I'm goated. Well, I say I'm goated. That TP placement is absolutely insane. Wicked it, tapped it, and then retraced down there to, I believe, this zone here. Would that have won? No, because it's invalid. You wouldn't have taken that. But yeah, again, this is a very nice trade. And this is why the benefits of not going for super high RRs, you just get a bit of a better win rate, because if you went for the highs here, 1 to 5, you would have lost, unfortunately. But that again is something we look for back in the back testing. We'll have a look and see whether increasing the RR will actually lead to better results. All I can say, however, is this trade is just very nice. I really like it. Lovely structure. Now this up here was unfortunately a loss. You can see I would have taken this any day in the live market because we also have the fake out zone. Look at that. That is beautiful. That means normal supply and demand traders are entering around this retracement here. They're putting their stop losses in our area, and then price comes down, sweeps them, and we get a nice entry. Unfortunately, this trade did lose. It is what it is, but I would have taken that any day in live markets. I think that's just a really nice trade because we also break the lows to the left, which is very, very nice. Seems like we just did catch a change in trend, but yeah, it's unfortunate when that happens. This trade here, if it went up there, then came back down, you know, it may be fine, but it just failed to break this high, comes down, sweeps the liquidity there with a really big candle wick, and then provides the entry. So I just skipped it. I was like, nah. And skipped it, it lost, which is very nice to see. This setup again, I did not take because I just wasn't a fan of it for some reason. Didn't end up winning, so that's obviously if you skip some trades, they do win. But I just didn't like it. I think the liquidity is fine. I don't know. To be fair, I probably should have entered on that because that is a valid trade, but I did not. Oh yeah, that's obviously why it's at 8 o'clock. That is exactly why I didn't enter. It was at 8 p.m. So entering at these times will just skew your results because that'll count as a win and increase your win rate, but you're not trading those times if you're in London sessions. So like, why would you do that? No. This trade here again, I'm just not a fan because liquidity is high and it comes down. It's like a downtrend of liquidity. It's not very nice. And if this high beat this high, then I'd be like, yeah, sure. But it's just, I didn't really feel like it was a nice trade, to be honest. Especially with that big ass candle there, it just seemed a bit weird. And yeah, it ended up losing. Now here's a very clean setup. Again, catching these trades. And the 5 minute, when you enter a trade, it doesn't always, it's not like a 30 minute when you get a nice change in trend and the trend follows your way. It's often these small movements before price maybe retraces and continues, which is exactly what happened here. So we had the setup, again, super nice liquidity, super nice breaker structure. You can say it's a double top, but honestly, that structure in itself is enough for me to enter because the way it just comes down to the zone is a super clean. That's another thing I look for in trades. And yeah, I entered on that, ended up getting a 1 to 4, which is more than enough. That is plenty, because look at that entry. That entry there is perfect. Perfect entry. And that's a perfect trade, in my opinion. That's very clean, very nice. And I decided then to enter on the supply, because it formed a very nice setup with this supply off this demand zone. But unfortunately, this did end up losing. And you could technically say, well, it is a double top. That is more of a double top than this because it's a bit wider, but you also do have again very nice liquidity and the breaker structure, so it's a tricky one. I did end up entering on this one because I thought it was valid and I thought in the long term we were acting a bit bearish, so we could get away with a nice little trade. It did lose, but that is unfortunate and that's just the game. This here, another valid setup, but it happened at 7:15. Now this is the case when the morning one's won. That's very clean. In my opinion, I would take that any day because we have lower highs, lower lows, clean liquidity. Even though it's a wick, it's definitely liquidity. And we have a breaker structure. This is a very nice trade in my opinion. And it was at the time frame, so we're not taking it. Now this trade was also very unfortunate. It got wicked out. Well, no, I didn't get wicked out. I just got stopped out. Very clean liquidity. We have 2 levels of liquidity here. Very nice. Breaker structure. And price closes below these lows as well, which is super nice to see. Unfortunately, the trade just didn't win. And I entered it on the flip because it's 9 AM. But yeah, this trade unfortunately just was a loss. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Price did end up retracing back in our direction, but I don't think we would have got the win there if we're aiming for a 3.5 RR. That is unfortunate. Now this up here, why didn't I take that? Because this price just didn't close beyond this price, which is something I do look for in a trade. This is a valid trade and I would take that on my spare account. What I've basically done is brought a cheap 10k ACG account. I'm going to use that for trades that I think are a bit lower quality, which will definitely help with my psychology and my trading. So if I'm ever unsure of a trade, I'll just place it on the lower quality account and just not care about it because it's a cheap 10k. And if I do like a trade, I'll place it on my second stage account, which is what I'm trying to pass. Taking a while to pass, unfortunately. Market conditions have not been great this last quarter of 2025. It's been awful. Unfortunately, this was a loss. This had clean liquidity, a breakage structure. We do have this wick here, but it's just very kind of bearish, nice bearish price action. A clean return to zone, nice entry, potential for high RR. Aim for 1 to 3. Unfortunately, it just got stopped out. But as I said, that is trading. And that was at 5 o'clock. So as I said, we'll go back to our results and have a look and filter them at the end of this session to see what our trades will be like from 8 AM to 3. Now, this up here. Oh my gosh, that's actually pretty lucky. I think I must have messed up the thing on that because as you can see, the entry's given here. I would have placed my pip, like TP, like there. Unfortunately, that does just wake you out. So yeah, I'm gonna go back and delete that trade because that stop loss I would have done it a bit tighter, I think, because our rules is 1 pip. Apart from that, that setup is really nice, clean break structure, liquidity, breaks the high to the left. Again, just an unfortunate trade. It will be deleted, but that there is a very valid setup. Those small setups do win a lot of the time, and with that entry like that, I'm very confident in trades like that, especially once I'm trading live. This up here I forward tested because we had a bit of an interesting entry. Again, it was a win. We had just a big wick, and this here just kind of threw me because we were waiting. Normally we enter just the bearish candle straight after this wick, but it wasn't bearish, it was bullish. So I entered there, forward tested it, and it won. Now I think this was a bit of we had a losing streak at some point. This may be it, but as you can see, this here is a nice setup in my opinion, except for the fact that we get the kind of re-entry. So this is another situation similar to that trade. So we have the bullish tap in, and then we have a couple more candles before the bearish confirmation, which is decreases. I think that does decrease the chance of the trade winning because these supply and demand zones are basically areas where there are orders waiting to be filled from large institutions. And if they're already filled here, that means when it comes back, there's going to be less orders to be filled, so less of a price movement. Looking at that setup, however, clean liquidity. The break structure is also present, although not as clean. And we have a lovely fake out zone as well. I think UJ is really nice at providing these fake out zones, which just increases the chances of it winning. Fortunately, this was a loss, but it is what it is. He has some massive news after, and yeah. Here's another little trade I did end up taking, and I only aimed for 1 to 2 on this one. I could have definitely aimed for more. Unfortunately, only got 1 to 2, but yeah, we have liquidity here. This breaks and closes below this liquidity high low there. Comes back to the zone, get a really nice entry on this candle, and there we go. So that made up for a couple of losses. Could have definitely aimed for something bigger, especially when the setup is small. You can definitely aim for a bigger RR, but in this case I just aimed for 1 to 2 because I was just a bit less confident because of these wicks, and it ended up winning, which is quite nice. This up here is just, I don't like it. There's not enough. I'm not a fan, especially with this weird consolidation here, and we weren't given an entry. On this one as well, 5:15 on Monday, I didn't enter because I was just a bit skeptical of this trade. Yeah, I think I didn't enter on this one because the stop loss was just so big. I just don't like it. I don't like entering when there's a big stop loss. It's just not my type of thing, because I've done enough backtesting to know that often, like, you can literally get, this is exactly what I'm talking about with these big stop losses. Like, you can get a big price movement. Like, this here is a big price movement, and it still won't fill your order. And it's a 1 to 2. It's a 1 to 2. And you have to bet on a huge price movement to fill, like, a small RR. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. This setup here, unfortunately, was a loss. Now, this is one this is a decent setup, probably B-ish, because we have liquidity, break structure. The only downside to it is that we have this area of kind of, I don't know, consolidation, and it doesn't really break any highs. It just kind of stays here. Does create liquidity, but yeah, this is just an unfortunate trade. To the L on this one, but yeah, that's trading for you guys. 11.15, so it was valid, and I probably would have taken this in the live markets. The only thing I'm concerned about is this here, because this is literally reacting off a supply as well. But yeah, it is what it is. And we have some crazy price action here. This is really odd. And here we also have setup. The price action gets a bit odd, to be fair. It's a bit like Wiki. But anyway, this here. What the hell? So yeah, this is a very valid entry. I like that entry a lot, actually, to be fair. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. We were very bearish. Lower highs, lower lows. These lows break the ones to the left. Clean liquidity, clean breaker structure, clean entry. This is a very nice trade in my opinion. And unfortunately, it did lose. We ended up getting a bit of a retracement instead. And price did continue going bearish, but it did happen a bit later. This setup here, again, this is when the stop loss is too big. I just don't like it. It did win, but you have to have a huge price movement for it to win. Clean liquidity though, clean breaker structure, break the lows. Pretty nice trade if you ended up taking that, but for me, I'm just not a fan, especially because it's a large structure. Like, the stop loss is too big in my opinion, and I just skipped it. Reason for skipping, as I said, I've seen trades like that before and they lose because the stop loss is big. It goes in the direction for a bit and then just retraces and loses. However, it is pretty valid structure in my opinion. Same with this one, except now this one I didn't take because it was a triple bottom pretty much. And it looks like this was a news candle forming part of the setup, which is always a bit odd, especially on the 5 minute. On the 30 minute, you can include news candles, I guess, in your setups, but on the 5 minute, it just kind of skews it. Because who knows what this price, is this price filling the movement or coming back to my zone? Like, you don't know. And although you get a really nice entry, I just think I would have not taken that, especially because we haven't got any signs of bearish movement except this break of the low here. Because if this is literally on a high, like this swing high, so we're kind of trading off that. Did end up winning though, but for me I'm kind of edge on the safe side a bit. Now here's a nice trade. There we go. I believe I must have entered this on this flip here of this candle, because basically when we are entering at 125, we know that in 5 minutes it'll be 130, which is a half an hour candle, which always like to produce their top and bottom wicks. So normally what I do, if it's at 125, I literally wait till the close. I don't enter till price comes down and then flips and then goes in the direction. I guess this is a bit of a bigger structure trade as well. I also kind of lower maybe the RR when it's a bit of a less quality trade, because as you can see, this trade has very nice liquidity and a breaker structure, but you have 2 lower highs here and 2 lower lows, which is a sign of bearish momentum, which is always a bit of a concern. So yeah, I managed to get a nice RR here, and then price did retrace pretty violently, to be fair. We have a big period of no trades, which is interesting. And our first trade seems like it was a win. Now, it does seem I can actually start including high RRs, because this one went down a lot. Now, is this news? I can't see the volume. It must be. Yes, this trade actually, yeah, I didn't take it. As you can see, there's no symbols, because I think this was news, and it was too close to news. I just, yeah, I saw news, and I was like, nah, I wouldn't take that IRL, because it's so close. If you've got news in 1 hour, especially news that affects this pair like this, and you're entering a trade, you're kind of risking a bit too much on the line there. But yeah, this one had a breaker structure, and a breaker structure of this low, so the setup itself is technically valid. But yeah, it's just don't trade during news. Right, oh my gosh, what is going on here? What? So this first setup I lost on, which is a shame, because this structure, oh, it's so nice. We have a triple breaker structure, triple liquidity all around the same area, especially that's super close to the zone. Really clean, and honestly, that is an amazing setup, and we break this high to the left. So I would take this any day. Now we have 2 zones. I took the first one, that lost, and I took the second one, and it seems like that won. And what did I aim for here? A 1 to 3. That's a nice 1 to 3. Honestly, that's a really nice trade. We got super nice liquidity. Bottom zone, nice entry. Small stop loss. Very nice. And yeah, you would have got stopped out if you aim for the highs, but that is something we will be looking at to try and See if that does help with the RRs. But yeah, honestly, that's a very nice trade. I would definitely take that in live markets. Now, would I take it after my first trade had been stopped out? Potentially not. But that's something that you can fix with psychology, because as you can see on back tests, they do end up winning. This is another situation where you have two zones. So you could have taken the first setup, or you could have taken the second. It was up to you. Now, this trade here, it did lose. Now, this is a bit of a lower quality trade for me, just because this breaker structure is just by wicks. But the liquidity is very clean. Return to zone, very clean. Breaker structure, alright. But the entry itself as well is totally fine. So I would have probably entered this on live markets, maybe on my lower quality setup account, just because of this liquidity. But other than that, I think that's pretty decent. I would have taken that maybe actually. So yeah, there's an unfortunate loss. Aim for 1 to 2. I could probably start increasing the RRs, but I was just trying to get consistent back test. Now here's another loss, unfortunately. Again, similar to the one I won. This is very, very clean structure. Brick structure, brick structure, brick structure, liquidity. And unfortunately, it just wasn't L. It just didn't hit. 1 to 2.5, that's pretty valid. Just aiming around this bottom area. The price closer there. Price decided to just retrace a bit, then come and go down to where we were targeting before, which is interesting. Yeah, an unfortunate loss, but I would definitely take this trade in live markets just because of how clean the structure is and the smooth return back to the zone. And if you want to look at it, I haven't even mentioned it, but it's below the EMA, which is quite nice. This here, I didn't take because there's just no break structure. It's too small for me. Maybe a trade at RD would take with that kind of liquidity, but for me, it's just a nah. I'm not a fan. Again, here we have another nice setup. This is really nice in my opinion because you have liquidity. See the same things every trade really that I'm taking. Liquidity, big structure, nice return to zone, nice entry. Bearish market structure, lower highs, lower lows, coming down to this area. And unfortunately, we just caught it on a reversal because price just then reversed and went back in the direction upwards. But yeah, it's unfortunate. In my opinion, that's a nice trade and I would have definitely taken that in the live markets. Right, interesting setup here. This setup here, it's just like a V shape. That's why I skipped it, and it was a good skip because it ended up losing. Unless you somehow were like that good to like absolutely snipe that TP, which I didn't do. I didn't take this trade. I just forward tested it. It's just a V setup, and I've noticed a lot of these V setups and upside down Vs, they don't really win because the return back to the zone is more of an uptrend than a quick return, which is why we just kind of tend to ignore them. And yeah, oh my gosh, another illustration of the most annoying thing in trading, getting wicked out. This setup here is amazing. Really nice liquidity break structure, high, beats the high to the left. Get a really nice entry here with potential for a nice RR. Get stopped out, and then price immediately reverses and smashes through our TP. Trust me, it's not very nice. I mean, in terms of structure, like, it's just so nice because it breaks all these highs here. It's just a shame that kind of happens. It's crazy. This setup here, yeah, again, is like a V setup. I just skipped it. Yes, it did. Price would close inside the zone. Hell nah. If you enter when price closes in the zone, you're not trading LSD correctly. But yeah, honestly, I just like UJ. It's just the setups it provides are all really nice and clean. And although some do lose, like, some do win. And if you got a 50% win rate when you're targeting like 1 to 3s on average, you're going to do well. This setup here, yeah, I was skeptical because, as I said, this looks like a news. See, this is a situation in backtesting which is quite difficult because this happened at 1:30, which often is a time I see for a lot of volatility before New York Open. But looking at the volume, you could argue that was also news as well because of that such a big wick. So in this situation, I did decide to skip this trade because it just seemed like there was news involved. And as I said, I don't like entering trades on the 5-minute when there's news involved in the trade because what is this retracement due to the news? Like, I don't know, is this retracement like caused by this? Is it trying to fill, like, what's the purpose? And I don't know. If this wasn't news, then I probably would enter. But I was just quite skeptical, and when I'm skeptical, I just leave the trade and let a forward play to see what happens. And yeah, this one did lose. Again, we do have lower highs, but not much bearish momentum actually. So this is a type of trade where you wouldn't aim for the lows. You'd aim to get a small retracement, as you can see here. Then price would probably continue up because we are pretty bullish right now. We've just broken above this major kind of high to the left. Triple bottom, except for this news, which is odd. You can, again, this news asset liquidity sweep, sweeping all the liquidity below these lows and pushing price upwards. So yeah, I skip this one. When you skip trades and it loses, it's just nice. Alright, that finishes part 1 of the video. Part 2 will be uploaded to my YouTube very soon, probably today or tomorrow. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I think USD JPY in the 5 minute is a very good pair, and in 2025 it's been doing pretty well, quite consistently. Join the Discord community in my bio if you want to learn how to trade the strategy and join, like-minded traders such as yourself. And yeah, I trade liquidity, supply and demand. It is a pretty good strategy, I can't lie. You get very nice RRs. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and just watch part 2 to finish this video and see the end results, which are very important.